Hello there, all my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina at CSL Designs, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this Egyptian style wirework cross. So I made a few different examples here to show you how it can look with different beads and also different wire. So if you want to learn how to make it, then keep watching. So the materials that we're going to need are first of all 2 different gauges of regular round copper wire. First of all, I have a 0.8mm here. This is going to be the base wire and the strength of the piece. And then I have a 0.4mm which is going to make the Egyptian style effect around the beads. And the beads that we're going to need are these 6mm rounds here. The specific ones that I'm using are blue coated hematite gemstone beads, but whatever you're using, just make sure the holes are large enough to fit your 0.8mm wire through. And then of course we need some findings as well, whether you want to use a pre-made chain or you want to make your own, that's up to you. Now don't forget to check out the description box below the video. I'm going to have all the materials written out and also some links you might need. Otherwise, let's get all the materials ready and let's get started. We then need to cut some lengths of our wire, and what I have first of all is 2 lengths of my 0.8mm, but they're different lengths here. So the longer one is 15 centimeters, and then the shorter one here is 10 centimeters. And then we'll need 4 lengths of our 0.4mm wire. Now these are all about 50 centimeters long. Now what I'm then making sure to do is that all the 0.4mm wires here are even on the ends. And then I go to the other end and I kind of want to just bring them together because I just want to find the midpoint first of all. So that's what I have here. So I'm just kind of keeping hold of that in a bit of a curve like this. And then I need to take my longer one of the 2 lengths of the 0.8mm, so the 15 centimeter long one. And we need to attach these lengths of 0.4mm. All of them working together, so basically going to end up laying flat next to each other on the wire, and I'm just going to wrap them around one time, like this, completely all the way around. Now I want to make sure it's nice and tight. So I'm just kind of pulling from both ends on both sides, and then also if you need to push them together so we don't really have an opening there. Now I'm just going to flip this around so they're kind of coming out from the back, and this is now our starting point, and I want to make sure it's kind of towards one end of my base wire. So we're going to be working up here with the rest of this length and building the cross on that. Now also make sure that your base wires here are nice and straight throughout so they don't have any obvious kinks or bends. And this is then the starting point where I'm now already going to then add my first bead. So grab one bead, and like I said, make sure your wire here, the weaving wire, the 0.4mm that you just attached, are towards the bottom of this long end of base wire. I'm then going to add on one bead to the other end. Let it fall down and sit right on top of the wires that you just attached. Then I'm going to start wrapping. I'm just going to start on my right side here because that's also the one that's furthest down, kind of below the other one. And then I'm going to grab them and kind of use them as if they were one. They're still laying flat next to each other. I'm going to grab them, bring them around the side of the bead and have them laying flat against the side of the bead. And then go over towards the other side, crossing over the base wire here, and bring them back around, straight underneath the base wire, right on top of the bead there, and then back out to the same side where they came from. So like that. And then if your base wire kind of pulls with it a little bit, just straighten it back out. But then basically we trapped the bead in place by doing that. And that's where we're starting to get that Egyptian style effect on the sides of the beads as well. And obviously I need to do the other side along with it. So again, grab all the wires in one section. Smooth them out as you go, whenever you need to. Bring them across the side of the bead, nice and flat, over the top of the base wire to come straight down. Wrap it around below and back out to the same side where they're coming from. And you can see we now have that effect of kind of caging in the bead just nicely. So that's the first one. Need to add the next bead. So we're starting from the bottom of the cross here. And if your beads and your wire have moved up a little bit, you kind of find that maybe it's more in the middle, you can always push it down. We do need just that short length just to make sure it doesn't fall off on this end. But just for now. And same principle, I'm going to start with my right side. Keep hold of all the wires, bring them around the side of the bead. Over the top of the base wire towards the other side. And then straight away back underneath to come out to the same side. And then repeat on the opposite side of the bead. Flatten the wires out. Around the side of the bead. And then bring them back underneath the base wire. Same technique. And now we've added 2 beads in the same fashion. Now to add the third one, I'm going to do the same, but I'm just going to stop a little bit before we completely get to the same point after the bead. I'm going to start by bringing the right one over first. Same principle over towards the opposite side, but instead of then bringing it underneath and coming out towards the same side where it's coming from, I'm actually just going to leave it on the opposite side for now. Just kind of bring it down just a little bit. You can smooth it out nicely. And this is mainly for now just to kind of keep the bead in place. And then I'm just going to take the other side and then bring that over the side of the bead to then come out to the opposite side of where that's coming from. So we achieve that same effect. But I've now added 3 beads, you could say. And this is the point where we want to start adding the sides of the cross, or the arms, you could call them. So I'm just going to leave these groups of the 0.4 mil on the opposite sides to where they're coming from for now. So to make the arms on the cross, I'm going to grab the last remaining wire that we haven't used yet, and this is the short one of the 0.8 mil, so the 10 centimeter one. And bring my piece that I'm working on back in. Now I need to add this to the initial base wire, so the long one that we're working on. You can see it's going to kind of get that cross effect, but to add it, I'm literally just going to place it anywhere on the wire here, because we can always move it up and down, but just making sure it's about the midpoint of the short length here. Then I simply just want to wrap it around all the way so we get the arms back out to the sides where they were when they were just laying across there, but it's wrapped around as well. And now what I want to make sure of is that this wrap is as tight as possible around the other wire. So you can use your pliers, you can kind of pull on the tails a bit here, and then just use your pliers to tighten it up if you need to. So something like this. And then as you can see, this can easily move up and down the other base wire. So this is going to be the base for the arms that are going out to the sides. Then we want to push this wire that we just attached all the way down to sit on top of the beaded section that we've already made. So just let it sit down there, and you can kind of see it lays on top of the sections or groups of the 0.4 mil wire as well. Now I'm just going to start on one side. We now want to start making and adding beads to the sides here, the arms, you could say. So it doesn't matter what side you start with. I'm just going to start on this side here, and I want to just add a bead to that length and let it come down. And we want to achieve more or less the same look as much as we can, obviously. So I'm just going to work with, don't worry about this wire being wobbly as well, because it will get fixed once we kind of add the beads and do the embellishment with the groups of wire here. Just making sure that all these laying flat next to each other. Now I'm bringing this kind of up behind the wire that we just added, just before the bead, and then I've got the wire ready to then be able to come around the side of the bead. Now it can be a little bit fiddly, especially because this is the first bead. Once we've done that one, it already becomes much easier because it kind of fastens things in place a bit. I want to make sure they're flat next to each other, go over the sides, or the side of the bead, and then over the top of the base wire to come back out to the same side. So you can see that is the exact same technique as when we're adding the beads in the first section. Now obviously we don't have a group of wires on the other side of the bead. We do have the group down here, but that's kind of coming down towards the other side, which we're going to use in a bit. But that's why on the side, so we're just going to use one group of wires to make the whole arm. So I've just brought this group over the one side. I'm going to add the next bead, let it drop down. Straight away take the same group here, go around the side of the bead, over the top of the base wire, and back out to the same side. And I like to smooth out the wire as I go. And then you can see we have that design on one side of the beads. You can just push it up a bit if you need to. Now to finish this side, I'm gonna continue with the same group of wires and now bring it all the way to the opposite side, so back over the top. So I've basically kind of wrapped around a whole time on the base wire. I then want to now take it and start finishing the other side of the beads. So I'm gonna go from the top here and then basically create the design on the side of the bead there, opposite side, to get it similar, and then down behind the base wire in between the two beads. So however you need to hold it, you'll find your own kind of way of doing that. Come back on the other side, making sure they're all kind of lying flat next to each other. Make sure you like how it looks. Now then come back over the top in between the two beads. If you need to rotate your piece, do whatever you need to. And then bring it around the side of the bead. So that's the last side that we haven't done on this arm yet. And then underneath basically the rest of the wires, so we can get that same effect. And if you need to, you can always push the group of wires against the beads. It helps flatten them out as well. And then what I'm going to do for now is just leave it at this point, kind of just hanging out like this, because I'm then going to go straight to the other side and do that, just so we get them both to the same place before we then move on. So that means just move the wires gently out of the way. The other group of wires that's coming from, if we're just holding it like this, from the left side, it crossed over that final bead that we added on the bottom, the third one, and then over towards the right, and then I left it there. I just want to bring that a little bit up and underneath the wire going out to the side before I now then add in my first bead on this side. You can see that's going to be equivalent to the first one on the other side. And as I do that, I then want to use this group of wires to come around the side of that bead. And then over the top of the base wire, and like this, and then back underneath. So that same technique. That's the first bead. And then we need to add in the next bead in the same fashion. So we're kind of, you could say we're adding the embellishment around the beads On the sides, it's on the top side first of all when you're looking at it the right way, and then we'll go and add the bottom side afterwards, but using the same group of wires. Around the side, over the top, back underneath, straight out to the same side, like that. So we reach the end of that arm, so bring the group of wires all the way around, so we can then come down the other side of the bead, bring it underneath the base wire between the two beads, just constantly smoothing up the wires, and then down the side of the next bead. So that was the first one we added on this side. Just kind of holding on to them, and then just smoothing out my wires, and then basically letting them finish and hang out just similar to the other ones that I did. So they're now kind of just coming towards the back, and you can now get a sense of how it's going to look. We've done the majority of it, so we basically finished the arms now. What you can also do is just go in if you need to push any of the groups here that's already been placed around the beads. You can always do that if you just want them to kind of show a bit more, if you need to push them down a bit more. And you can also do that at the end anyway. But this is the point that we're at now, so what we have left is finishing off the very top part. So I need to get my groups of the 0.4mm in position to be able to do that. So what I'm going to do first of all is just have them stay on the side where they're coming from. And also what I kind of like to do is add just a little bit of kind of embellishment, you could say, right in the center there, just to cover up any wire that we don't want showing, and make a little bit of a design feature of that as well. So I'm straightening out the groups here. So this group is the one that's coming from the right side, and the other group kind of look a little bit mixed right now, but they are separate groups. And this group here is the one coming from the left side. So they're kind of staying to the sides where they made the embellishment there, where they're coming from. Now what I want to do is then cross, and also it will fasten the whole piece more together by kind of crossing over and under this middle section a bit more. So again, if I kind of try and make sure I have my 4 wires laying flat next to each other. Now again, it doesn't matter what side you really start with here. And then as if we were going to wrap from this left side above all the beads towards the right, but kind of crossing over, coming downwards a little bit. But I want to grab only 2 of the wires to begin with. So the first 2 on the outside here. So I'm grabbing them, bringing them across the middle, and then kind of into the gap between the bottom part and the right arm. So something like that. Then I'm taking the wires from the right side here, grabbing the first 2 from that side. So these, separating them out, and then bringing them across. So they are now basically just going across the 2 that we wrapped first. Make sure they're flat next to each other. Then I'm going to take the remaining 2 from the first side that I started with, bring them across towards the right to join back up with the other 2 that we separated them out from. And then making sure that they're kind of creating almost what's going to end up looking like a little braid in the middle. So I'm not having them all kind of just laying right on top of each other. They're all going to be a little bit off from each other, which is going to create that nice design effect in the middle there. So this one is kind of above all the others. Now the last 2 on the right side, make sure they're straightened out, nice and flat next to each other. They're now going to be above the others. We're kind of, the top ones like this, bringing them down to join up with the other two that we separated out before. So we can now get this little kind of braid effect right in the middle. Now they're both coming towards the back. What I'm then going to do, doesn't matter which one you take first. I'm going to take my left one and then all four together now. Bring it from this bottom left corner, cross behind on the back. Obviously you can flip your piece around if you want to. It's going to show you how it looks here. So I'm crossing from basically one corner to the opposite one. So it's going to end up coming out on the right side. Now the other one here is going to cross the same way but opposite. So I'm crossing from the bottom right corner towards the top left one. So on the back they are also the groups crossing over each other, but just the groups as they are. And again, I'm just smoothing them out as I go to make sure there's not going to be any kinks or anything. So my wires, first of all, I've now, you could also already, on your own you'll be able to tell, it's already a lot more sturdy. You're not going to be able to move it around like we could have initially. And we've also added a nice little design feature. So we can now move on and literally finish off the top. So I'm going to add my next bead, because the groups of the point formula are ready to then go around the side. And I always make sure I start with the same side. So like I did on the bottom down here, I always took the right side first and then left, and then right and left. I'm going to keep doing that. Smooth out the group, this around the side of the bead, over the top of the base wire, back underneath to come straight out to the same side. And then the other group on the other side to cage the other side of the bead, around the side over the top of the base wire, and then back underneath to come out to the same side. So that's the first bead. And the second one, which is also the last one, just get it on here. There we go. And now same principle, but here I'm also now gonna start finishing off my wires, because obviously we have these 0.4 mil lengths left. I'm not just gonna bring them around like I did all the other times, because we need to be able to finish them off securely. And since it's the last bead, I'm gonna do that now. So to do that, I'm gonna have both my flush cutters and my chain nose pliers ready here. So I'm just gonna have them conveniently available. Then what I'm gonna do is, I want obviously the finishing also to still blend in with the design. So I'm going to start with the right side like I normally would, but instead of just bringing the whole group over, what I'm going to do is I'm kind of starting the movement so I get the wires in position, and then when I'm happy with how they would sit, I'm going to separate out the very first one. So kind of from the front there, I'm going to take that single wire and still, you can always use your fingers as well to keep and hold things in place. I'm still going to bring it around the side of the bead, over the top of the base wire, and then down behind the base wire. So it's now coming out to the same side where it's coming from. But what I'm then going to do is take it and wrap it around the base wire one more time, making sure that wrap is nice and tight. And then I'm going to take the wire again and kind of wrap it again, but not all the way, because we need to make sure that these wires are secure as well when we cut them off. So I'm basically wrapping it back over the top so it kind of stops on the front here. I then take my flush cutters, making sure I double check I'm happy with how everything is sitting so far. And then on the top here, cut off the excess right close to, basically as far close as the pliers will go. Then you're going to find you have a little end of the wire sticking out. So that's what I take my chain nose pliers for. And just push down, and if you need to, I like to push it down and then just roll in the direction that the wire is going around the base wire, so it gets rid of it. So that was the first one on that side. Then on the other side, I'm also just going to, first of all, take the whole group, bring it around the side of the bead, kind of start the movement, so we can then see what's going to be the first wire that I'm then going to separate out. So again, the furthest front one, and then bringing that over the top of the base wire. Now I'm just leaving these wires kind of closer just to be able to know which wire I need to take next. But take that wire over the base wire after bringing it around the side of the bead, back underneath, and now this needs to also wrap around. I'm pushing it as close to the previous wrap as possible, and then wrapping it around again. Make sure the wraps are nice and tight as they can be. And then start another wrap, and then finish kind of on top, which is then where, after checking I'm happy with how they sit so far, I want to go in and cut off the excess. And then flatten the end down. And then you literally keep doing this, moving from side to side, making sure which one is the next wire I need to separate out. Just grabbing the right one. There we go. Bringing that around the side of the bead. Now making sure that that one sits below the first one, so we get that same effect around the side of the bead. And then over the top of the base wire. Now again, just keep stacking these wraps on top of each other. I want to wrap this as well an extra time, just for the extra security, because obviously we don't want it to come undone. I'm just going to use a chain nose to make sure it's pushed nice and tight down. And then I'm finishing on the front. Cut off the excess, flatten it down, and like I said, we just want to keep repeating this. Go back to the left side now, pick out the next wire, and then I'm going to keep going from side to side like this until I just have the last wire to wrap and finish off. Just bring it around that base wire on top of all the other wraps, making sure they're nice and tight. You can see this is how it ends up looking. So obviously it's going to be a little bit different, but the reason that we kind of finish off the point formula wires like this individually is because it's far more secure than if you did it in the whole group. Because when you finish off a final wire, you kind of need to wrap it by itself, ideally around just one base wire, and also more than once for it to be most secure. So that's what we've done here, but we still kept it nice in the design and finished off now all of the point formula wires. So what we're left with is obviously the cross in itself, but we just have the ends of all the base wires there sticking out. So to finish them off, I'm going to use the very top one, so kind of the longest length I have left, to actually make a loop, a wrap loop, so we can obviously put this on a chain or something. So I'm just going to leave that till the last one. I'm going to finish off the shorter lengths here first of all, and they're all going to be in the same way. So I'm just going to show you. I kind of like to start with the very bottom one, so the opposite to the top one. And this is the front of my piece. So what I do is take my chain nose pliers, I go in and grab onto the base wire there, just maybe about 1 millimeter or so above where the point formula wire is, so the wrap there. Then I grab onto my piece and I start to bend the base wire back, so towards the back of the piece. And basically I just want to get this as tight to these point formula wires that are wrapping around as possible. So the actual bend here, wrap it towards the back, So something a bit like that. And then what I'm going to do, when I can't really push it anymore because obviously the bead is in the way there, so I'm going to go in and cut off the excess length. But I want to cut it so the length that's going to be left is going to basically align with where the bead starts, more or less. So something a bit like this. Cut off the excess, then take the chain nose pliers again, and obviously because right now it's quite open, so I want to tighten that up, and I then take the chain nose and push it further in. So the very end of the wire is actually going to end up kind of butting up against the bead there, and you just want to squeeze this really as much as you can. So basically just tighten it up so the very end is not sticking out at all. Make sure you go over it with your finger that you can't feel it or anything, because the end of the wire is, like I said, kind of tucking up and hiding away against the bead. And from the front, you won't really be able to see it much. It's a tiny little hint of the 0.8mm that we bent, but it kind of just blends in. So that's how I'm going to finish off, obviously the one I just did, but then also the two side ones, so the arms. Do that in the exact same way, bend them towards the back, right close to the 0.4mm wires, finish off the excess, and then squeeze it tight. So now for the last wire there to finish off, like I said, I'm going to do a wrap loop with that. So what I'm going to do is, I like to kind of do mine sideways because then the chain will go straight through, and also the loop won't really be that obvious when you're just looking at the cross from the front. So I like to just flip it to the back, and then take my chain nose and place it a couple millimeters above the wraps of the 0.4mm wire there, just so we have enough space to do a wraps with after the loop. And then I bend it about a 90-degree angle towards the front, and then I'm going to be using my 6-step bell making pliers here, and I'm using the second smallest just because, like I said, I don't want this to be too dominant. And obviously you can use round nose pliers, it's up to you. Place that on the bend, bring the base wire all the way around to create a full circle, just like we do a normal wrap loop, like that. And then I like to put my chain nose pliers on that circle, while I then take the rest of this tail and wrap, and basically fill up that little space that I left. That's below the circle, but above the wraps of the 0.4mm. And I'm basically just going to do a few wraps until I don't have any more space. Just make sure the wraps are nice and tight. So just one more, I think. And I'm also making sure that my wraps here don't finish on the front, just so we don't end up with the cut wire on the front that we can see. So something like that, go in, cut off the excess because we've done plenty of wraps now, it's going to be nice and secure. And then always just make sure to squeeze that little very end down, because if you put your finger over it you can feel it, so that will probably catch on your clothes or your skin. If you don't, just make sure to squeeze that in, kind of flatten it down. There you go, make sure you can't feel that. You've done your wrap loop, so you can put your chain, whether you want to make your own or pre-made chain, straight through there, and then you have your cross that's completely ready to wear. So that is how you make my Egyptian style wirework cross, and I call it that because originally this technique with the wire around the beads I came up with for my Egyptian style wirework bracelet. So obviously it's inspired by that, so that's why I thought it would be an appropriate name. But I hope you like it, and of course you can really make it your own by using different materials. Now I am going to have some of these available in my Etsy shop that you can buy if you're interested, so you can always go there and have a look. I'll have the link straight to it in the description box down below. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.